there, welcome back, Pod and Deliver. And this week we have a guest by the name of Kenny Completo. Hey, welcome, Kenny.
Good morning.
And you know Ruben from back at oh no Brady days, of course.
I do.
And Kenny, you know
what Jacob means is that we used to attend the same church, the church on Brady. Most people might not know that, Jacob.
You know, I just love having Ruben here, Kenny.
You say the old Brady days, they're thinking, oh, Brady is old.
Brady,
he just retired. So you gotta clarify, my friend.
It's good to have Ruben because he really gets me. He's like my interpreter for the rest of the audience. So I really appreciate that. You have a brother too, right, Kenny? I mean, you know how
I do.
Hey, Kenny, can you let our audience know what you do in education and how long you've been doing it?
So I started back in 1987, and my journey in education started with subbing in Montebello School District. And so I did that for about a year. And then back then they had the amnesty program. So I joined in. They were looking for teachers to teach night school for the adults who were planning to becoming U.S. citizens. So I signed up, and I did that for about 4 years. And then after that, I was hired at Cal State LA to teach in their continuing ed program. I did that for 5 years for international students. And that was more English at the time, and I was working on a master's there. So they were gracious enough to hire me and let me go to school at the same time. So that was all part-time, of course, you know, with school and with work. And then I got married to my wonderful wife, who was a teacher for, I think she was teaching already 14 years. So, so I had to step it up and look for a full-time teaching job.
There you go.
So
is that when you started becoming a librarian?
No, I actually started out as an English teacher, and so I did that for a couple of years, and they asked me if I was interested in taking the library position at Edison Middle School, and there was another English teacher who was interested, and we were kind of going back and forth. And I said, "Listen, if you take the job, I'm going to stay in the classroom." She said, "No, you take the job." And we went back and forth, and I wound up doing it. And sure enough, there was a lot of LAUSD teachers who were leaving the classroom to become librarians because there was such a great need. And that was back in 1998 at that time. So I had to go back to school, and it was all Saturday at Cal State Long Beach, and finished it in about 2.5 years, and that was it. But it was great. It was probably the best career change I made because I've been in the library ever since. 6 years later, they asked me to apply for a district position for local District 3. They needed a courting field librarian for local District 3. So I applied, and I was given the job, hired on to do that. And I did that for 5 years until 2009, when the cuts came. So my colleague, who was the courting field librarian for Elizabeth Learning Center, she said, "You should apply Elizabeth Learning Center." And I said, "Well, I actually want to work in Lincoln Heights and work at Lincoln High School. It's closer to home."
Right.
She said, "No, you have to work there. You won't regret it." So I said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." So they hired me in 2009, and I've been there ever since.
Oh, wow.
And I've been loving it.
I want to ask you about your time at Elizabeth Learning, because some of my former colleagues have spoken so highly of you, and I wanted to even ask you that. And because Jacob will know a little bit more about that. But Kenny, what was the pull? Because I'm an English teacher. What was that initial pull to go from the classroom to the library? What was that interest? Why was that an interest to you?
Well, at the time in 1998, they had, I don't know if you remember that program, that UTCP program. If you put in 40.5 hours a semester, they paid you a stipend of, I think it was $1,000, and you could do it. So you can do guitar club, you can do volleyball club, so what I did is that, we went on field trips with the kids and took them to bookstores. And right over here, we took them to San Marino and Pasadena, and we took them to bookstores, and just really enjoyed that with the kids. And so the librarian thought I was interested in working in the library because, you know, I took these kids to bookstores. And then I used to also supervise the library at the time as well. And I said, no, I'm not really interested much. She said, no. She said, all you have to do is just buy some books and mind the store. Oh, by the way, you got to go back to school and get another credential. So, okay, yeah. So initially I wasn't interested. I've always been interested in books and libraries, but not as a career. But once I took a look at it, I decided, yeah, I think I could do this. But to be honest with you, I was actually scared to death because it was year round, and I knew nothing about running a school library. She gave me about a 3-day orientation, and of course, I forgot mostly everything she told me. But the first class that I had was library management class, and the instructor at Cal State Long Beach was very, very good. She took us to like the cream of the crop libraries in Orange County, and I thought, why doesn't our library look like this? Because there were some nice libraries out there. And so, of course, people in LUSD thought, you know, we got to get our libraries looking the way these libraries look. So that started a remodeling project in our library, and the principal was great. At the time, she provided the funding for it. So we did some remodeling in the library. We did a lot of taking out the old books. If you walked in the library, the books shelves were just stacked. But when I got there, I took about 5,000 to 6,000 books out because a lot of them were graffiti, they were old, and it looked good initially, but I thought kids shouldn't be, you know, exposed to this the material or these books, you know, in the shape that they're in. And there was a lot of money at the time. In 98, a bill was passed where the district was getting $20 per student just for the library.
Oh, wow.
So I had a lot of money to spend over a period of 5 years, well over $200,000 just for library books.
Wow, that's changed, hasn't it?
That's changed a lot. So, you know, eventually they started, you know, whittling that fund down, and then it became part of the general budget.
Kenny, we did a video. What you're talking about now is demonstrated in such an urgency after we did this video with Wade Harlan and Helen Harlan about read aloud and how critical it is to read to students, or, you know, even just them listening to books. It's so important. Jacob, do you remember what some of the colleagues, for our former colleagues, have said about Kenny? What makes him an effective librarian?
Well, I think, you know, this goes for anybody who does this, is just being, first off, just your personality is being a kind and gentle soul. And I think somebody who's, another word is that's used with your name, Kenny, is generous. Not only generous with finances, but generous with time. So that's what I remember Kim Parker mentioned. And so I know Oswaldo Gomez is a big fan of you as well. And so I remember, even as we're talking about this, Kenny, I just remembered how the library looked before you got there and the way it looks now. I think Ruben remembers because he was there back in early 2000s. I think, Ruben, you'd be surprised if you were to take a visit. I went there not too long ago, and I'm like, it's not the same library. It's a different library, and it makes a difference if you go into a space and you feel comfortable, and they're not books all over the place. I mean, you want books to be there, but you want there to be some type of order. So I think that's why a lot of the staff, and Ruben's alluding to, that they think kindly of you, is because they can send their students there, and they feel like, hey, you know what? This is somebody who's knowledgeable, who's actually kind and caring and generous with his time. And I think that just it paints you very well, Kenny. It really does.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Does it though, Kenny? Has it changed though since when you first started, like your day? I mean, do you still do read out louds and all that?
Absolutely. When I first started in 98, there was first of all, there was one internet connection, in the libraries. That all changed. I can remember doing my first presentation, one of my first presentations, and I thought this is a real big thing, to promote books digitally. And we weren't using the internet yet because there wasn't, wireless didn't exist. So I had to put everything on CD-ROMs. So I remember putting a presentation together, and if you show students books, and I thought, so I put this presentation together of books that were not read a lot. So I thought, wow, I'll put books that are read a lot, books that are not read a lot, and I'll present them. And I think we used PowerPoint at the time. And I'd show that to kids when they come in. This was at middle school. And I thought, wow, they actually went to those books because they saw I did a book talk with each book cover that students would see. And I just remember this one girl picked up, it was a book on the African-American experience, and either it was had political content in it or social justice content in it. And she went and picked it up. I thought, wow, she would have never picked up that book if she never saw the book cover and had a book talk. So I was sold on book talks. Number one, there's a difference between a read aloud and a book talk. A book talk is when, you show the book cover and you explain what the book is about. You don't tell them everything about the book, but you leave them with a cliffhanger for them wanting to check that book out. And so I saw that, I think, for the first time at a workshop where the presenter, she must have presented, book talked over 100 books. And I thought, how did she memorize all that? She knew every title, she knew every author. And in the presentation, I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to show students these books. So I got, in the library world, you get pretty excited about books and getting those into the hands of kids. And I've seen that over and over again. Now, read alouds, we have a little corner in the library with about 20 seats where pre-K and kindergarten come in. And sometimes the first graders as well, they'll come in for a read aloud. We'll sit them down in audience style. And my library aide and I, we work together. Sometimes she'll do it on her own. She'll do a read aloud. Sometimes we'll do it together. And kids just love it when you sit them down and you read them a book and they hear the language, they hear the storyline, they hear the beginning, middle, and then you can make that book as exciting to them as possible. They get totally excited about that. So read alouds are still important for that. Jim Trelease was the guru of read alouds, and he really promoted that. And he said, parents should be reading to their kids even up till high school. And he said, I did that with my kids, and he was reading Where the Red Fern Grows with his own son, and they would both cry together and have this bonding relationship. So of course I did that with my girls. I'd read aloud to them. I'd take them to bookstores. And there was one point where one of my daughters said, I hate reading. And I can't remember if she of course she was in elementary school. So I kind of freaked. I said, wow, this can't happen. So I canceled the TV subscription for a year. We had no TV.
That's child abuse.
It's good child abuse.
It's good child abuse.
I think it's wife abuse too, because she said,
right.
Hey,
why do I have to be punished?
Said, can we get that TV back? So what we would do on Friday nights, we would go to bookstores, and there was a bookstore right down the way over here in Arcadia, and we Borders, I think it was. Okay. And we'd sit there and read books, and then it got too expensive because they wouldn't want to buy all these books. So we wound up going to the library and said, okay, it's library time. We're going to the library.
Kenny, when you mentioned Borders, a tear came to my eye.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in Glendale here, and there was a Borders.
That's right. Was it on the corner of Brand and California, I think?
Something like that, yeah. And now it's a Marshall's. It's such a great building.
Right,
It's a
right.
beautiful structure, and that's Marshall's.
Sadly.
Sadly, yeah.
I was gonna say, are you gonna say something, Ruben? I was gonna.
Well, I was gonna. It's so cool that you said book talk. I wrote this down, book talk, because we get so. I still teach English. We get so caught up in the content and things like that. We don't slow down and talk about the books that are around. So I have 1,000 books in my classroom, and with great colorful titles, but to take the time, because I have my students go select books, but some students don't know how to select books.
That's right.
And you want to walk through them, even high schoolers. So I teach 10th and 11th. So I'm really gonna emphasize that. It's a good word.
Okay, well, let me give this to you. There was a group of us. In fact, Ozzy Gomez was there. Robert Mills and our assistant principal and others attended the UCI writing project at UC Irvine. This is back in December, and Kelly Gallagher was one of the main speakers, and he partnered with another speaker, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but they worked together, and they said, changes are necessary in reading instruction for kids. And Kelly Gallagher, that's his passion, right? So they presented two possibilities, which we're going to give it a go. The first one was helping kids read in book clubs. And it's just not your traditional come to the library, have a book club. I've done that before. And it was teacher advised, student led. But this one was a very interesting concept. And you guys, I think, Jacob, you said you wanted to do this with your kids in one of your podcasts. And the concept was small group book clubs. And this is how we're gonna let it roll out. And so there's about 3 teachers who are very interested in this. Ozzy is one of them. He gave me about 12 titles of books to order. And so we're going to use those titles because he knows what his students need the best. He's going to group his students in groups of 4. And those groups will have a student, have a leader. So they'll choose any of those books to read. And then the teacher's going to decide how he's or she's going to grade it and give them credit for that. But that book club will meet on their own, whether it's at lunchtime, whether it's virtually, whether it's after school, but that group will be responsible for reading that book. So he's going to have multiple book clubs in his classes. And so there's these 3 teachers who want to do that.
That's
and
great.
You've got to get students in small groups. You got to get them responsible for finishing their work. And I think you mentioned that in your podcast.
Yeah.
You wanted your students to be responsible for each other. Was it you, Ruben, or 2 who mentioned that? You wanted to have these small groups and they'll be responsible. You only relate to that one leader.
Yes. So
yes, it was Ruben. Yeah.
Yeah, that was you, right? Yeah.
What's great about that is the accountability of peers is often more powerful and forceful than us as teachers. And you get the strong leader and you only deal with that leader, and then they deal with the others in the group.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant. I thought that's what they were promoting at the writers workshop. And I thought that's what we want to do. So we're hoping to give it a go this semester with at least these 3 teachers. The other thing they said in the writing project was that they called it digital essays. And basically, these students are making a movie. They have to write the script, but they choose the theme, and in the presentation, of course, it's going to include images and videos and interviews. And they showed one example of a student explaining her father's workday. So it's high interest for the student. She puts it together. She did put it together, and it was beautiful. It was a story about her father.
Oh, that's great.
I could see the scaffolding of that type of project where you start by going over what a screenplay looks like, as opposed to what a novel looks like, and you build them and you build their interest. You show them maybe a scene or two, and then you said, this is how it looks on the paper. You create. I could see that being very useful and fun for the students and the buy-in.
Exactly. And see, and that's how I have to think, because, you know, Kelly Aller was saying we have to think differently about how we help our kids in literacy. And of course, writing is so connected to that. So I think that's so important. You know, I think one of the questions you were talking about, what's changed today? Of course, the read alouds haven't changed. Book talks haven't changed. But I do remember this one program, and I'm actually using it with special ed kid students or students who are in special education. And it's the SRA Reading Laboratory.
Oh, I remember those.
Remember those?
I remember those, yeah.
Use those in elementary school. And you know, it's really interesting. When I taught at Cal State LA, I use those cards for international students who are learning English. We dedicated 1 day a week in the reading class, and they love those because it's individualized reading program. They learn at their own pace, and it's a very successful oriented program. So I started doing that with kids who are in special education and elementary. When I go back on Monday, we're going to start it with high school because I bought 3 kits. And so they're going to really get practice with that. So it's another way to get kids to read stories that are relevant and current and have high interest as well. So yeah, there's just different ways to help kids reading. And then of course you have your traditional practices where kids come in, they say, Mr. Completo, do you have a recommendation? Sure I do.
That's love. You probably love that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any challenges though? I mean, I see such a positive. I'm sorry, but I mean, I loved working with you, and you know, there's very few people where you say, yeah, nobody can say a bad word about this guy, and you're one of those people that you just don't. You know, I know you're a godly man, and it shows, and thank God for you being on that campus. But what kind of challenges do you have? Do you have challenges? Maybe you don't. I don't know, regarding being a librarian. You know, working with kids, because I know at my school right now, Kenny, it's a little crazy right now with especially the freshmen. But
sure.
What are some of your challenges?
Well, I think those challenges are universal in all schools, whether it's elementary, middle, or high, and we all have to deal with them. When they come into the library, I try to make it a sacred space for everyone. And so right now they're promoting the 6 pillars of character at our school, which is wonderful because their kids are hearing that over and over and over again, which is great. So when they come into the library, it's important, you know, for me to let the population know, the community know that when they come in, it's a safe space for anybody and everybody. And when they come in, there has to be this level of respect and consideration for, even if there's just one student who is reading a book. So there's no horseplay, you know, there's no loud talking, there's just no loitering. That doesn't happen. When it does, then I have to deal with it. That is a big challenge, because I have students, they come in groups and they'll just walk around and they just kind of wander. You know, it's really strange. And then they'll start playing with each other, making loud noises. And I say, hey, then I just have to stop them and say, you see that student right there? You know, we need to be considerate and respectful to that student because he's doing his homework or he's reading. And it's a teachable moment, you know, for them. But now you have to leave because, you know, you can come back, okay, but you're leaving today. So I don't like doing that. It rubs me the wrong way. It's against my grain, but you know, to protect the other students, I'll do that. And then, you know, go play outside, go eat outside. When you're ready to come back, come back.
I think it's creating the culture
Exactly
that we have. And now you go into bookstores and libraries and you're mindful that people are studying, and you sharpen that character of these young kids. You know, that's important.
Have the computers been a challenge though to have them in the library, or is that more of you see that as more of a blessing? It's more of a resource for the kids.
Absolutely, because back in '98 they introduced to us the digital library, and that was LUSD's digital resource for the whole school community. So that is what I promote. And, I definitely tell them, you're going to spend a lot of time, sometimes unproductive time, going to the Google universe when you're doing research, because you're going to get millions of hits, on a topic that you're researching. Otherwise, you can go through vetted resources that the district is paying for, and that will help you out. And so, those are good things. But yes, kids do still come in and they want to, print inappropriate things out, or they want to play games, or, but I'm pretty lax on Fridays. If they want to come in and play games on Fridays after school, I'll give them that. But because we have limited desktop computers, I restrict it to pretty much research and academic work for students to use, because a lot of students don't have printers at home. So they need to, print out their Google Docs and use our printer as well. And as well as teachers, teachers need to come in and, because sometimes the printers
don't work, and
right? So they'll come in. Hey,
Amen.
Hey, just
I've done that.
Right? This place is your house, so come in and use it.
Very cool. Go ahead, Rupam.
No, I was just going to say, I might walk into your library, print something out.
Yeah, as long as not currency, I don't want to go to jail. So
hey, Kenny, you mentioned working with the, 'cause at your school it's very different. It's a K through 12. And do you have like a recommendation, as we're closing up here, 3 books maybe that you've maybe teachers don't even know about it, but they're great books for children. And then the last thing I want to ask you, so those 3 books, and then finally, what are you reading right now personally? So can you share that with us?
Yeah. So because it's pre-K-12, there's a lot of territory to cover. And I have a leanings towards children's literature. So there are 3 books that I think of that are fun books. I use Storyline Online. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's a great resource for kids, because these are actors and actresses who are reading popular storybooks.
Oh, yes.
And everybody, from like Kevin Costner to Oprah Winfrey, and others who read popular books, and they have a great diversified collection, for everyone to enjoy. So there's a lot of great books on there. I think of Arnie the Donut by Laurie Keller. That's a children's book. That's a great book. Betty White reads Harry the Dirty Dog. That book is over 50 years old, and it's still read, and kids still enjoy it today. It's like that book. It escapes me now. It's about a fish with the scales. It'll come to mind.
I remember the old Encyclopedia Brown books, but I don't know, that was kind of silly, I guess, but they were fun.
Yeah, there's still a lot of great books out there that you can read. I really like, I have a whole listing and a schedule I read with kids. We go with print books and then digital books, and some of the print books are great, like Officer Buckle by Peggy Rathman, and it teaches young kids how to follow rules. And so those are great books. But there's a whole list of good children's books that are available, that are always coming out as well. Middle school is really interesting, because I really like young adult literature that comes out for kids. Like I think of Pamela Munoz Ryan, who wrote Esperanza Rising. That is a popular book that's used, and I think it's part of the curriculum that is read, I think, depending on what reading program you're using. But that's a great book about a young girl who lived a privileged life in Mexico and lost everything because of a greedy uncle, and they had to flee to the United States, and they wind up working, of course, as farm workers, and it's their whole experience about that. Kelly Yang's another great author. She wrote Front Desk about the Chinese American experience, and that's a great story about a family trying to make it in a motel right near Disneyland. So that's another great one. The One and Only Ivan is another popular book by I think it's Catherine Applegate. It's a story about animal captivity from the animal's perspective. And so that's a great book too. Students love that. So I can't keep those books on the shelf.
Oh, cool.
Needless to say, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, is just so popular. But some teachers don't like their kids reading that because they think, oh, it's just cartoon figures and it's not really real reading. And I tend to disagree because good old Jeff Kinney has sold over 200 million copies of his work, and the humor and sarcasm is very sophisticated in those books. So those are great as well.
I agree. If it weren't for those books, some of my students wouldn't be reading. They just gravitate.
That's right.
Just gravitate, and they'll reread the same one over and over again. I keep two different. They're so popular with a certain percentage of my kids that I had to buy 2 sets.
Yes.
Of every, and they'll reread them, and I love it. So
I'll do another plug for a book called There Will Come a Time by Carrie Arcos. She came to our school and spoke with to our students, and students loved her. But if you look up Carrie Arcos in her website, she's written several books right now. And so she's just a wonderful writer, and you'll really like her experience that she shared. And the reason why I actually like it, and I didn't really know this, but the protagonist is a Filipino. And,
hey, that's great.
Yeah, there you go, man. And
Awesome.
and I asked her, I said, how did you get all that insight into Filipino culture? And it's not about Filipino culture, but she weaves it into the story. And she said, oh, I had a grandmother who was my consultant, for this book. And so great writer, great author. I think you'll really like her as well. What am I reading right now? Well, I'm reading the book called Tuesdays with Maury, and I think you told me you read that book.
We both did. Ruben and I have read it.
Yeah. I'm just about done with it, and I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to finish the story, because I kind of know what's going to happen, right? So I'm reading that book. There's another book that's going to be on the launch pad, and it's called Edison, and that's a school I started out with. And it's a new book that came out, and let me see. I think I had the author. Let me tell you who the author is on that one. Give me a second here.
But that Mitch Alba, man, he has written so many books now. I've read so many of his books.
I will say,
Mitch Alba, yeah.
Tuesdays with Maury is one of those, I don't want to say life-changing books, but really influential books on me. I just thought it was Maury. What a character! What a person!
Anyway.
Yeah, and I really like his work because he left his career and he became a philanthropist and very generous with his money. Edmund Morris, it's a new book that just came out, and it's called Edison, and he researched over 5 million documents before he wrote this book about Edison. And I was always fascinated by Edison. Well, I worked at Thomas Alva Edison Middle School. And I thought, well, who is this guy? So I started reading about him. I thought, wow, this guy was something else.
He got a little unpopular for a while because Tesla kind of, people started reading about him. But now, hopefully, this will kind of balance it out a little bit. Huh?
Yeah. So, but that's my next book that I'm going to read. Oh, I also want to read Spare by Prince Harry. And kind of.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, see what's happening overseas, right?
That's great. You know what?
Thank you for the recommendations and the time.
Yes. Sure. Thank you for that. And you know what, Kenny? It was so much fun having you on. We've been talking about having you on, and we haven't had. You're our first librarian, and
wow.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. Yeah. And like Ruben shared before, there's so many people out there who's worked with you, who's really appreciated who you are and what you do for the kids. And so, Thank you for that.
Hey, well, listen. Because you guys have history with Elizabeth, I'll send you the the video of the new school. You know, we're going through $140 million modernization.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Right? So they're going to build a standalone library, 2.5 times the size of the current library. I'll share with you the video that the architect put together, and so it's going to be awesome. I think we're moving in, I think in 2025, so we have to start packing up the current library in 2024, sometime in the fall.
Okay. Oh wow, good for you guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, you'll see it. You'll see the whole. It's a great, great presentation on the whole school, and you'll see the library. It's just blow your mind. So,
good for you guys, and good for the
I
school.
hope you come to the grand opening. You know,
I hope this is an invite. I will go there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Kenny. Well, with that, we want to thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
And welcoming Kenny. And Kenny, you have yourself a good night. Ruben and our audience, we'll talk to you soon on Pod and
Thank you for having me on.
Great.
All right, really enjoy you guys. Okay, take care.